We have five readers for you tonight. Three of them are 125. Two are folks that we just haven't had a chance to come on out and read from their stuff. So I'll have those people come up first, and then we'll have the readers from 125. So let me introduce our first reader. Liala Zaray holds an MFA in poetry from St. Mary's College of California. Yeah. Where she was a Risk Press Fellow. She has won poetry prizes from Palette Poetry, Smartish Peace, and Tinderbox Poetry, and she's currently working on her first collection of poems. Her poetry was published in issue number 124. Would you please give a warm welcome for Liala? There you go. I think that'll work.
I hope so. Hello. Oh my God. Thank you. Shout out tech support. So I was in issue 124, and my pieces were actually centered around the events that happened in Afghanistan back in 2021. My family's from Afghanistan, and a lot of those in diaspora and also within Afghanistan were severely traumatized. My thesis largely focuses on God and what that looks like for somebody who has existed within a war zone, because I really feel like that changes your dynamic. If anybody here has ever partaken in smoking marijuana, specifically the indica strain, that is from Afghanistan. So this next poem is actually called Afghan Kush, Kush meaning, of course, our slang term for marijuana, but in Farsi also means killer. So it's Afghan weed, but it's also Afghan killer. So here's Afghan Kush. They have bombed another city. The specifics of how and where are not a matter of discussion anymore. I honestly think it would kill us to mention it again. Instead, we light a disgustingly plump joint as an homage to the motherland and make jokes about talibs and mullahs, how history has rendered the two indistinguishable. We exhale until the air between what our parents witnessed and we witnessed becomes cloudy and thick with smoke. Somewhere in the future, we will be safe enough to ask about poetry. Tell me, what will we do with our hands until then? I'm running out of family members who do not consider this life to be a curse. I'm envious of the cedar trees which overlook the city, their ability to die standing up. When I die, tell God I was only an infidel when he wasn't looking. This next piece was inspired by the Grand Mosque in Cordoba, which, in case you did not know, you cannot pray at. We found out on a road trip halfway through on Eid morning, my friend and I, who were wearing an abaya and a hijab. It was very, very awkward because we also found out that the guards don't like that. So we learned a lot on that trip. So here's an homage to Derwish, Mahmoud Derwish, who I think I would have been best friends with in another life. So here's reading Derwish in Cordoba. Quite embarrassing to admit, but I didn't know we couldn't pray at the mosque turned cathedral until we saw the guards surveying our hijabs with scrutiny. After all, it was the Eid where Abraham had sacrificed his son, and I too wanted a tender love worth bowing my head for. It took me the entire trip to realize that homeland is not a window, nor is it the cup of hot water you mistake for tea in desperation for anything familiar. Homeland is a space between where you are and where you want to be. A land where clocks still have purpose. In it resides a painting from powdered lapis stone, ironically titled Blue in Afghanistan. It sells for the price of a plane ticket. You will spend the rest of your day wandering from pulpit to mihrab, looking under each pew and between the pen stroke of each letter found in Allah. How long will you search before you understand God does not exist in exile? Tell them again how hard you looked. Thank you. this last piece, she is new. She is untitled, but I think that's the best. You got her fresh off the dome. Of course, she is about God, but more importantly, I think she is about love. And so much of, I think, our lives come with like the idea of love and poetry. I went to an art exhibit recently, and it was centered around Afghans, and somebody asked a really, really heavy question of, when we live in a world where we come from a war zone, what purpose does poetry have? And I was like, I'm so happy nobody asked me that question, because what a question. But I think it does come down to, poetry is not a weapon, it's not a tool, it's a mindset. I feel like somebody who comes and engages in events like this is less likely to destroy when they understand the effect and effort that comes into creation. This was really, really hard. It was like a lot of effort. We have people like Oscar coming and like creating events like this. It took a lot of effort. I think no one who understands that will be so willing to fight in a war and pick up a gun. So with that being said, here's an untitled piece. After he left, I bawled like a baby, returned to the fetal position and swayed back and forth for hours before repetition itself began to mock me. Everything is Nasib, my sister whispers before combing away strands of damp hair. I want to hit her so hard it disorients destiny. Her certainty is nauseating. The muezzin proclaims Allahu Akbar, and my heart, with enough room to hold God and heartbreak, responds, how can something be greater than us? My wine glass is empty, and I cannot remember to feign belief in God or in love. Both have renounced me for refusing submission to their will. The Abrahamic faiths warn believers against lust and serpentine pitfalls of truth. Is temptation not sustenance? Tell the believers Eve hungered even after she ate the apple. The first emotion my frail body learned to communicate was desire. A small hand, both reaching and enduring to communicate. Touch me, embrace me. I'm bursting with life, overflowing with sin. In every universe, I pray I find the version of you that doesn't pull away. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Liala Zaray, thank you once again. Give it applause. Yeah. So yeah, I'm wearing this. I'm getting over something. So it's like, it's not even, so that's why I have this on. It's mostly for my protection. I don't know who you people are. So I'm like, I'm wearing this. But here's the thing. I totally forgot about this. What it does to your glasses. Yeah, that's fun. Okay, let's try this. Our next reader is Yohanca Delgado. She is the hell was... She's a 2021-2023 Wallace Stegner Fellow at Stanford University, a 2021 National Book Critics Circle Emerging Critic, and a 2022 National Endowment for the Arts Fellow. Her fiction has appeared in Best American Short Stories, O. Henry Prize Stories, Best American Sci-Fi and Fantasy, and her recent essays have appeared in Time, The Believer, and New York Times Magazine. Her story, The Withering, appeared in issue 123, aka our poetry issue. We please give you a warm welcome to Yohanca Delgado.
Maybe it works just fine. Hi, can you hear me okay? And now for something completely different. I have a lot of obsessions. Some of them include creepy babies and twins, and that's what this story is about. And I'll just read from the top, and it's called The Withering. When Ma wheels us down the street in our double stroller, the women seem to drop out of the trees and rise from the manholes, practically keeling over with mother hunger. Clutching their purses to their chests so as to move faster, they scuttle and sprint down the block toward us, heels to pavement, even if they're pregnant, especially if they're pregnant. They ask Ma in shy, furtive whispers if they can say hello to the babies. We understand why they do this. Ma is beautiful, with long, shiny dark hair and large eyes. They want to see her cloistered progeny, hidden under the pink sun cover. They say in the old country that you should fill your eyes with beauty when you are pregnant, or hope to be. That seeing beauty will manifest something lovely in your own insides. Ma smiles and pulls the sun cover back, and in the women lean, expecting to see two beautiful little baby girls, two round-faced peas in a pod. Instead, they see us. The recoil is almost imperceptible, but when they call us beautiful, they say it with a verbal flinch. Politeness grabs these women by the backs of their necks. They lean in closer and smile at us, their eyes alarmed. We do not smile back. Politeness grabs these women by the backs of their necks. They lean in closer and smile at us. They're so cute, they coo, eyes trained above our heads on our pink candy-patterned wrapping blankets. But so serious. Oh, and they're holding hands, too. I know, Ma says. They've been like that since the day they were born. I think they're going to be real smart. It's not like we don't see what other people see. We are different from other babies. We are not plump and soft like someone made us of too much puff paint. We're skinny and long with deflated cheeks and pruny lips. But we also see each other the way Ma sees us. Ma's memories carousel across our eyelids when we close our eyes. The glint of Abuela's teeth in the sun, the smell of a new backpack, Coney Island at night, the sweetness of street churros. We cannot walk or talk, but we kneel at the altar of the world. Most of our days are spent in countless transitions between car seats, strollers, and pack-and-plays. Ma's arms are becoming sinewy and strong. Our father is absent most hours, most days, and the fact that she is raising us alone is not lost on us. We try to commiserate with Ma when she gets out of the car in her tight dress and unloads us into the stroller, but our words don't sound like they should. We try again, try to say we're sorry for being unpretty babies. We have something else to offer, we try to say. The message gets lost, somehow, in gurgles and mules. She smiles down at us, uncomprehending. You first, Audrey, she says. She wheels the stroller around and opens the second door. And you too, Sydney. We do not like to be separated, but we understand how the unloading process works, and so we do not cry. Besides, from the stroller, we can sometimes see the sky, blue and endless, with buildings on the block looming overhead like concrete giants. We hear the sounds of the street, the men selling things who try to sweet-talk Ma. Once, one walks alongside us for 2 blocks, pretends he doesn't see the stroller, keeps up a salesman's patter, increasingly insistent. As the stroller lightly jostles our heads from side to side, we watch him from below, taking in his double chin and gold chain, the darkening of the sky as the night falls. When we try to warn her, Ma pulls the sun cover down over our heads, and we are plunged into pink, pink dark, where we listen in tense silence, holding hands. Somewhere above us, Ma laughs a tinkly laugh, but she eventually shoos him away, saying she's got to go home and change our diapers. When he actually goes, we breathe a sigh of relief. We remind ourselves that she is only 23, 8,480 days. We are 3 months old. We know everything, but already we are forgetting.
Yohanca Delgado. Thank you. All right. Our next reader is the first of our folks who are contributors to the new issue, 125, and has been doing a marvelous job adjusting the microphone. That would be Dan Alter. His poems have been published widely in journals, including Field, 14 Hills, Pink, and Zyzzyva. He's been a fellow of the Iran Arts Project and is the author of the poetry collection, My Little Book of Exiles. And for the last 18 years, this is a fun fact. You remember fun facts? Well, this is a fun fact. For the last 18 years, he has worked as a union electrician, building hospitals, bridges, and many floors of high-rises while you were playing video games. He lives in Berkeley with his family, and his poetry is in issue 125. Please give a warm welcome to Dan Alter.
Thanks, Oscar. And well, it's such a pleasure to be here. Can Can we just have a shout out to Zyzzyva? What an amazing institution we have. Zyzzyva, I think I've been. That's the COVID test. I think I've been published in you guys maybe 4 times, and I was telling my friends, used to only take paper submissions, and I remember Laura's little handwritten notes on the rejections that kept me wanting to try again. And anyway, I'm really honored to be here. This poem that's in 125 is from my forthcoming, hopefully. This publisher said they wanted to take it, but then they haven't been answering the emails. It's called Hills Full of Holes, and it's a book that got started while I was walking in the East Bay Hill parks daily for 6 months while I was getting over a concussion. And when I was done, I was working on those materials. I really wanted to think more about that land. So this is a poem about that land. It's called Because My Father Got a Better Job. That's also the first line. Because my father got a better job 100 and some years after men, as if there were not words for each of its mosses, had gutted the forest of coastal oak and ballooned their 1 or 2 stories across the plain, we arrived in the tide of west-moving vans to leafy streets named for Caesars of parcels, a newspaper baron, a bear stirring only on nylon. The weather was so gentle. All morning fog hung around like ghost friends who would, in a whisper, sing along after their fog dinner parties. The highway was like a young, confident president, and there was a richer blend of coffee to nurse on the corner of Oxford and Vine when my always looking up father brought us to Berkeley's stucco slopes. It seemed like a perfect idea. Who knew the concrete footings we asked a bank for were poured on top of dances? All right, and I'll read a couple of new ones. I've been on a sonnet tear. Any other poets out there gotten into sonnets? Oh my God, they're crazy. It's like a train. You get on it, and then it just keeps going. There are no titles. So, when didn't I know about the ashes, the attack dogs? We breathed it in and out like gray moths beating on smudged glass. Numbers cheaply inked on the butcher's arm who sliced kosher beef for my father. The war ended. Grass grew back over pits outside Kiev. Marku walked toward Harry with his arms out in Yiddish on a train platform, but Harry only stared. On rails, trains paused, huffing steam or coal smoke, lacing human time and place together. After 40 years, Marku walking towards his brother. The air we breathed cracked like old sidewalks, time laced with rails running east from Amsterdam to hell. The butcher was round-faced and bald and sliced meat for us kindly, his forearm tattooed as if in a dim room or the dark. Harry, my grandfather, died like the air. Neither Marku nor his 7 other siblings would I meet, so I climbed until the branches tapered off and swayed with me and their needles. Okay, this is, we were walking here past Haight and Ashbury, you know what I'm saying, and there was the crowd there, and I just remembered that this is one of the sonnets. It's sort of a shout out to them, those people on the corner there. Back to Georgia, Carter took his cardigans. Reagan made a father voice, and dollars pulsed from missiles in the Middle East to a pet army called Contras. Down the hall were those skirts or tapestries around the legs of the couple who had taken up the mantle, their biblically pungent incense and oils to the waist, their matted hair, their ferret in a cage, arms soggy in the air when they danced for their band, faithful. Wholer than whole wheat are loaves steamed when cut open despite factories evaporating and rifles stacking up in Waco. The hippie ship a decade since sailed. Off came my hair auburned in 2-year sun, but threads on my knees still thinned and surrendered. Even if I held it in, smoke like dirt, couldn't get high. The rain fell mainly on the rain, so with his long hair bandanaed, Claude and I got in my relic van and drove west until the fuel pump went, stranded again. Claude, so tall he always seemed to be bending down, wouldn't come out for a year or two. Montana, hot wind, mountains surrounding. All right, and I'll read one more of these. I think they're quick. I think I'm still in my time zone. Thank you all for coming. It's yeah. Okay, I'm an electrician. I think that was in the bio, and before I read this, just I'll shamelessly blurb. I was like making snacks for my daughter before I left, so I forgot to bring my books to sell, but my little book of exiles, you can get it on the Evil Empire, or you can ask them to order it. Okay, so this is a poem from my life as an electrician. The smell of 10,000 turds, said one of the guys as we got out of our trucks. Sunrise was driving up with the traffic rivering the overpass. On lichen green walls of the refurbished skimmer pools, we ran our conduit. Eric quoted me a poem I'd posted. Seagulls keened, bustling above, under the grates, black foam on sludge-brown water. Eric, who drove every morning an hour from the valley, told us how he talked a judge into letting him go. I let him disappear into the years when the job ended. The skimmer arms would pull through black putrid water skimming off grease. When I close my eyes, a hole in the dark finds me. Slept with my eyes open when I was 4, and they laughed, but how could I tell one door from another in all that dark? The other night, one of the guys said, I dreamed I was the father of roads. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Oh, Dan's getting stuff.
I'll stay for the mic.
Yes, thank you. Dan Alter, once again, thank you so much, Dan. Our next reader is Jane Marchant. She is a writer, photographer, and collage artist from Berkeley. Her work has appeared in Guernica, Catapult, Apogee, Columbia Journal, and elsewhere, as well as anthologized in the Beijing of America, personal narratives about being mixed race in the 21st century. She lives in the Bay Area, and her nonfiction piece, which I think reads beautifully and is also presented, I think, beautifully. Wonderful art there from Jane. Is called Encyclopedia of Botany. Would you please give a warm welcome to Jane Marchant?
Thank you all. So my title page kind of gives you a summary of what my project is, so I think I'll just go for it. Jane Marchant's extraordinarily condensed excerpt from her Encyclopedia of Botany, pertaining to curiosities found in the floristic province of the San Francisco Bay Area, and the author's explorations into maternal root systems, particularly those found in the garden of a crooked house in the unincorporated community of Kensington, located in the North Berkeley Hills of California, to give testimony and ask for witness to memory, myth, or fact, in homage to the land she grew from and for which she most yearns. Pinkies. An herb in the primrose family, these are petite plants with pink flowers that fit on my pinky nails. They grow as a common weed in Mexico, the United States, the United Kingdom, and France. My mother was born in Chicago. My father was born in London. They met while living in Paris. My father worked as a DJ at a radio station, and when my mother called in for a contest, he told her curtly she didn't win. She took offense to his tone and stormed the station. He pretended to be a different DJ, and they fell in love. My mother's uterus began to grow abnormal tissue on its outer layer. After her operation, she wasn't supposed to be intimate for several months, but she was, and the womb that wasn't supposed to host a child healed around my older sister. They married in England, where my father's mother lived. No one from my mother's family was there. My white father's white mother thought my mother exotic, with her coarse and curly black hair, warm-tanned skin, and tinkling silver bracelets. My mother was 30, my father 24. In our yard, pinkies grow 2 to 6 inches tall. Outside our property line, they can reach up to 2 feet, depending on support systems, microgeographies, and the climates within them. They thrive in fields and along chain-link fences, playground asphalt, and ditches like those lining the gray streets of Los Angeles, where my mother was raised and where her mother, sisters, brother, cousins, nieces, and nephews still lived. My mother wanted to raise her family near them, so she and my father moved with my sister from Paris to Los Angeles. They lived there a few months when the smog broke, and my father looked up and said, "There are mountains there?" When I was 2 years old, my parents moved us into the North Berkeley Hills, into the unincorporated community of Kensington. Our yard was barely a quarter acre, but felt endless as it layered down our hill. Our father divided the land by purpose, and we named each section accordingly. In our top yard, he wrapped a low stone wall around its perimeter, dug trenches, and laid drainage pipes. Above the plastic tubing, he planted grass. He knew how to dam soil. The previous owners of our house had turned the garage into a room with sliding glass doors leading to the top yard. Our mother named it the playroom and started a daycare out of it. White parents dropped off their children and paid our mother for her services. We were poor then. A little girl attended my mother's daycare, and she was my best friend. She got sunburnt in summer and had blonde hair that crackled when her mother brushed it smooth. My brown bangs curled over my forehead and tangled. She was beautiful, sweet, reserved, what a little girl should be. At a slumber party, she introduced me. "This is Jane, my little Mexican friend." It was the first time I'd heard it. My mother didn't want to talk about it. She was busy, she said. "Hurry up, who told you that? It's none of their business. Get out of my way, this pan is hot." This is what I knew on my own. In kindergarten Spanish class, girls pick new names for themselves, beautiful names like Mariposa, but I wasn't allowed to pick a new name because I already had one. Yo me llamo Juanita. At night, my mother was a waitress at Chevy's Fresh Mex, a Mexican chain restaurant in the plaza at the bottom of our hill. There were lots of big hats there and machines that spun out tortillas. I liked the raw dough. In her apron, my mother brought home the restaurant's white napkins, washed and folded them, and put them in our hall linen closet. We had a great-grandmother in Los Angeles who, I was told, had adopted my mother's father when he was a child. I thought this meant my mother's father had been an orphan and this grandmother found him and saved him, making her great. And I was grateful to her. When she opened her front door, she pulled me to her, greeting me mija. Her voice rattled, and I loved this great-grandmother. I loved her apricot cheeks and how the skin on her hands felt made of silk, but I couldn't understand a lot of what she said because of her accent and intonation and how often she switched into Spanish. We sat at her kitchen table late into the night as grandmothers and mothers and aunties spoke above, around, and into each other all at once. One of the women said this grandmother was from Oklahoma. I'd seen one photograph of my mother's father. In it, he had brown eyes, brown eyebrows, light brown skin, and a kind smile as he pressed his cheek to my mother's cheek. Auntie said this great-grandmother and her husband were American. They'd always lived this side of the border. This made my mother's father Texan. He was native Texan. He was a native Texan Indian, and you can't get any more American than that. One Los Angeles visit, we piled into cars and convoyed to a distant cousin's house. Children skipped through the house, and mothers shouted in a language I pretended to understand. The women gathered in the kitchen, laughing and talking like rainstorms. If I wanted to stay, I had to keep out of the way. Sit at that table. I watched the women. They were small and round and quick as they performed routines of 1,000 times, slicing onions, gutting avocados, frying pork. They swayed and spun around each other as they opened drawers or dropped knives into the sink, and it seemed to me they shared a singular heartbeat. They tinkled as coral bells, all vivid colors and low-cut shirts and gold earrings and chunky silver bracelets like my mother's, and I was amazed to see her join them, to transform into one of them. I wanted to be one of them. I wanted to belong to them, to be one with them, standing over garbage cans, peeling husks of endless piles of corn for tamales. But I obeyed and stayed at the table alone. Then there was a little girl in my class at school who looked a lot like me. Thick brown hair, awkward bangs cut by mothers, skin that changed between summer and winter. She was Mexican and had a bright smile the blonde girls teased off her face. They called her dirty. They said it so many times all of us children could feel it on her, feared it would rub off on anyone who dared befriend her or even stand too close. The blonde girls chanted to her, "You're ugly, you're ugly, you're ugly." If I was Mexican, that meant I was ugly too.
Yes, once again for Jane Marchant. Thank you. So we're down to the final reader. Oh, and if you know how to do math, you know who this is. But before I introduce them, I just want to say thank you all for coming out. This is really wonderful. I don't, Dave Eggers had an event tonight. I'm just saying this is fantastic that you're all here. Te salud. Also, if by chance you don't have a copy of the new issue, we did bring plenty. So I urge you, please, no shoving, no pushing. You will be able to get a copy of this newest Zyzzyva. There's no reason for this lovely evening to end in bloodshed. It's just okay. Thank you. All right. Last but certainly not least is our next reader, Angie Sijun Lou. She is She's a fiction editor at Fence and a PhD candidate in literature and creative writing at UC Santa Cruz. Her stories have appeared in the Canyon Review, New Letters, Black Warrior Review, the I Never Know How to Pronounce That Journal, and elsewhere. She lives in Oakland, and her story, Glint of Sport, appears in issue number 125. Will you please give a warm welcome to Angie Sijun Lou? Oh, there she is.
Hi, is this working? Is good? Hi everyone. Thank you so much, Oscar, for including me in this. It's a big dream come true to be in Zyzzyva and to read with so many writers I admire. I'm going to read from Glint of Sport. So this story was very, years in the making. It was very elusive to me for a long time. I couldn't figure out what it was about until last summer when it finally coalesced. I was in a workshop with Alexander Chi, and he read the story, and he said in very one succinct line, he was like, "This is a story about a teacher who feels like she has no weapons or no instruments for disarmament except for poetry." I was actually echoing, what you were saying earlier. And after he said that, I kind of rewrote big swaths of it, and it's finally the version that's printed here. So there's two parallel narratives. The first, I'm going to read one scene from each, and the first narrative is about, it's about a woman, and she has an upstairs neighbor who is like addicted to video games. Dennis has been mirroring my precise footsteps in the unit above mine. His studio and my studio share the same layout, which is the same layout as every studio in the complex. When I walk from the kitchen to the bathroom and then back to the kitchen, Dennis pads along above me, following me. The sound trickles down from the laminated wood. I've been living in this apartment for 7 years now. Dennis for longer. I've come to know his rhythms, the sound of his voice like I know my own, although we hardly speak to each other. On Sundays, he orders takeout and plays Call of Duty Black Ops on oxycodone. He slurps spicy ramen broth and yells profanities into the headset. The screen's white light illuminating the sriracha bottle's crimson husk. If only I could detect ultrasonic waves. I could map if Dennis keeps his furniture in the same corners as mine. We could be living synchronous lives, Dennis and I, two vessels along the same vein. The next sequence of scenes that happens is, so she's a poetry teacher, and she's trying to get her male students to write about something other than like ultra-violent ideations. When it rains like this, I can't see the desert, but I can listen to the sounds it makes. I ride my shiny red bike to campus without touching the handlebars. It's more fun this way when I close my eyes and cruise past the strip malls, the subtopian estates, oily swamps lined with emerald chlorophyll. My students commute to school in different ways, but we all show up with our books and faces slicked in the brightness of rain. Public speaking still flusters me, even after all these years. I stand at the lectern and look at the audience, my eyes blank and lidless as the eyes of a goldfish. It takes me a long time to come up with something to say, especially about poetry. It's not like history or science where I can look up the answers on my phone. Sometimes I struggle for so long that my students blow spit wads and chat amongst themselves. They're too young to understand that their professors must labor to form language. It doesn't flow from our bodies the way tears and spit often flow from our bodies. No matter what the writing prompt is, some of the male students in my class find a way to write about killing themselves or each other. They imagine apocalyptic scenarios and outline what they will do when the satiation of hunger becomes the sole focus of their being. They can't wait for the righteous to throb against the knife, when the eyes are still connected to the brain, before the sediment of oblivion settles in. There's a cold spark, a decibel louder than the rest. It's hard to contain my dissatisfaction with them. Sometimes I even roll my eyes. Professor, one boy intervenes. It's not our fault that we know such violent things. If anything, another one says, it's the fault of the media. They nod. Maybe you could just be less explicit, I say. You don't need to describe every arc of blood that sprays from every exit wound. But they have to describe every arc of blood that sprays from every exit wound so that there's no ambiguity. Even if you kill everyone in the world, I insist, I still think you can do it with some subtlety. They love to play dumb with me because they know I'm out of touch. I've been alive for years longer than they have, but they seem to believe my time on earth has left me dull and unimaginative. They look at me like my experiences have whittled me away, which is true. My experiences have whittled me away to reveal my true form. The students disappear in a flash as soon as the bell rings, leaving me with an absence that echoes through the auditorium. Thank you.
Thank you, Angie, and thank you all of you for coming out to again to all our readers, Liala, Yohanca, Dan, Jane, and Angie. Thank you all so very much. And again, folks, did I mention we have Zyzzyvas? But you know what? Even if you don't need a Zyzzyva, you may not. There's like lots of other books here, so please do avail yourself of that opportunity. Thank you, and have a good night.